Om Indram Mitram Varunam Agnir Maturato Jivyaha Sasuparna Godrutman Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedantyagnim Yaman Matarishvanamahu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. The Vedas and the Upanishads declare that all religious traditions of the world lead to the same universal goal. They call that goal the eternal companion, the friend of all beings, the winged carrier of consciousness, the waters of eternal life, the fire of yoga, the devourer of death, and the one who shines forth the light. That is Brahman. And there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us. May that Brahman sustain us. May that Brahman illumine our thinking consciousness. And may that Brahman save us from all impediments and obstacles and reveal to us the essence of the scriptures. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. With that sloka from the Rig Veda, the oldest scripture that we have in the world, we find this great truth of universality of all religions being stated thousands of years before this CE, the Christ era, they call it, and all the way back into the time of before Sri Krishna and even back to the time of Lord Kapila, who gave us the Samkhya Yoga and its 24 cosmic principles. We have that all given out, handed out, along with everything else that India gave us in terms of 6 orthodox darshanas, a number of non-orthodox darshanas, a whole bunch of religions that are indigenous to India, and some that are took on India as their new home, and lived there with the Vedicists and the Hindus and all their monastic and householder devotees for thousands of years, all giving rise to a kind of proof of this universality of all religions. Sarva dharma astapakastam, as they say about that, how to be steady, swarapakaha, in all of the religious traditions of the world. And that's what we've been talking about the last 2 Sundays for about an hour and 15 minutes on each occasion. And terming it the universe of universality, university of universality, or the universe inside of the university of universality. And therefore, giving us a crash course in the Kali Yuga. That's this dark age of descent into forgetfulness of divine things, including our own nature, our own perfect nature. Giving us that access to a high ideal that the ancients held in great esteem, and as the ultimate truth of great systems like Advaita Vedanta, and what the knowers of all the non-dual versions of Advaita in other countries, mainly due to the incursion of Buddhism into those places and the birth of Lord Buddha 550 years before Jesus, and the spread of that universality, hoping for a more peaceful world, a world that was more full of ahimsa rather than himsa. We should change himsa to hamsa, I think. It's occurred to my mind. We need these beautiful souls that come pronounce this declaration. And we can start off this third and final class of this series that way. I want to reread what we started out in the first class, just so we really have a good consummation and conclusion about it. That's the quote at the top of this chart that came to me as I put my mind on this subject, of which we will do a quick review of before we start into the frosting I promised last week. We're going to look at not only how this universalism, if you want to call it that, is already here amongst us, and it's just probably not being uh, observed properly or in full by the world's different religions and the world's different religious leaders too. Of course, there we have a much different case in that example of Swami Vivekananda, who came here and brought us the Vedanta. Along with it, those yamas of yoga, starting out with ahimsa first, nonviolence. It's like you can't even really begin to consider true religion or to go beyond it to true, authentic spirituality unless you have this ahimsa, this non-aggressive, nonviolent nature, and give up supporting anything and everything about it so that you won't run afoul of those great teachings of the seers. You'll always be able to realize them and have them for your own, even beyond and outside the body, which we know exists in our tradition, not only in the forms of the Dharakashas, all the kingdoms of heaven within. It was an ancient word in Sanskrit used thousands of years before Christ made that statement, kingdoms of heaven within. The Dharakashas, akashas of space, and those are all within us, within the great mind, which is itself within Brahman, the ultimate reality, all powered by the Shakti, Divine Mother, dynamic power of Brahman. So all of that then is available to us with this coming of reemergence and remembrance of the universalism that's at the foundation of everything. That is, I'll prove that to you by sayings from the different seers, saints, and founders of religions in the concluding part of this final class. Let's read this quote then, because it reorients us to the whole thing and kind of consummates it. The world's religions are like rivers. They flow to the sea. They consist of the same water. Again, they are like different colored flowers in a bouquet, all fragrant and beautiful. Again, they resemble children from various races and having different colored skins, but all precious. Simple analogies like these should help humanity begin to cherish all faiths as part and parcel of their own birth religion and chosen religion. A university of universality, then, would design an open-minded curriculum that would aid all dedicated applicants to enter hands-on courses in them and deify, and deftly allow the student of world religion to gain some direct experience in the practices and disciplines of each. A greater peace and world harmony would be the result. So that sort of states the vision outright, again, exemplified very well by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in this present age, where he had visions of different religious traditions after he had found and contacted the Divine Mother, which was his own chosen ideal, called Mother Kali, and had 12-year sadhana and world transforming sadhana, we like to call it, opening nadis, pathways inward to these Dharakashas and beyond them to Brahman, all in the spirit of nonviolence and the recognition, pratyabhijna in Tantra, that all these religions come from the same source. Another analogy we could have used there is Sri Ramakrishna's own analogy of digging one deep well to find water. And you thought maybe your water is the best in the whole village, but then you find out the water in your neighbor's village is as good or even better, maybe purer than yours. And same with the whole village, because underlying it's this big reservoir of pure water that everyone's drawing from. A good analogy for people thinking consciously in their minds, hands-on was the main statement there, accent of that statement, that everyone who is from another religion is not only to be tolerated, not just to be tolerated, but it's not only to be made friends with so you could be sister religions, but you should actually have a great curiosity and aspiration to know what's that religion like. It should be a natural curiosity inside of us that we want to know all the practices, dynamics, and the subtleties of religion, of all religions, so that it will help ours to grow all the better based on this fact that there's just one divine reality, nameless and formless. It's underlying all of them, permeating them. That's the foundation. Christian mystic Meister Eckhart called it the ground of existence. It's the very ground of all existence with a capital E. So with these analogies, we start out thinking again in that terms. I hope we've been ruminating on it all week because it's something we want to do hands-on. We want to find out, as we did last week when we studied Jainism for about 25 minutes, remember that? How one of the Swamis of the Ramakrishna order got permission to go and visit all the Jain temples in India that he could use in the time he was out on the field, and came back after talking to Jain priests and with all these beautiful teachings on Jainism. Well, I used that last week as a proof again, if any is needed, that this hands-on experience in a religion that's maybe somewhat different than ours, and I hope you can look at this chart again really quickly with me as we talk about that, are all sister religions, with the same God underlying all of them. God is one, indivisible. It's been said in the most ancient of the Asian traditions that I just chanted from the Rig Veda. It's also been said all the way back to early Judaism about the Father being one. So both sides of religion, if you want to call it that, from different hemispheres of the world, have had this unanimous conclusion that God is one, and we are all one with that. So that means all our religions, too, would be one with that. So you could see all of them listed here quickly. From the bottom up, on the right, we're talking about Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, all coming out of Abraham, you might say. So it's just this four-step religion that we have that's broken into four different expressions, you might say, all with the one God underneath it. On the other side, you have some of the Eastern religions, Buddhism, Sikhism, Taoism, Jainism. We studied Jainism last week in part, and Hinduism and Zoroastrianism. You can see those. These aren't necessarily divided into East and West, but they sort of fall naturally there. Confucianism from China, and the Chinese folk religions, are so many of them, so they're beginning to call them other religions. You can see that written on the back classroom building. And also ethnic tribal religions are many. So all of these are part of that. You might say even the 1.9 non-religious sects who are unaffiliated with these religions have some sort of idea, philosophy of their own around existence, around the way things are. Probably we studied it 2 weeks ago. One of the least of the favorite of all of them would be materialism. It's funny that India is known for having so many religions and all of them keeping this one high ideal in mind, but yet there was Charvaka, who was a materialist philosopher, and just to include one of those kinds of viewpoints in all of the sweep of India's philosophies and darshanas, they will talk about Charvaka and how his idea of matter being real and it being all we have to rely on here sounds very much like our Western scientists and our Western viewpoint. So the whole bouquet of flowers there, maybe there's a black flower there, who knows? Maybe that black flower is also an opening to something that we need to understand about all traditions, all the religious world traditions. So only enough to say that if you have this nectar given to you and you walk the pathway of religious harmony up the middle there, you come to the courtyard of higher awareness, then inside of that university of universalism are all the seers from many different traditions of the world. Let's look at those right away as a quick segue um, to to getting some proof from the various sources of these very religions, because we want a hands-on experience of it. So we want to then look at some of these great teachers that have, some of them have founded religions. I don't even know if it was their intention to found a religion. They just came and wanted to say the truth. There's no Buddhism when Buddha attended the world. There was no Christianity when Christ attended the world. So this grew up around them. And it's good that they did all these religions so that we could be comparing them like flowers in a bouquet or tasting them like same water from different villages and having this final conclusion that the expressions, the religious traditions are expressions of the one same Brahman. So you can see here, and when long before I did these two charts that I'm showing today and that we've seen throughout the last two classes, I did a lot of thinking on it and in terms of searching the different scriptures of the religious traditions of the world and coming up with these kinds of quotes. Let's take Lord Buddha's first. He's up at top. They who regard the body as a flake of foam on the waves shall no longer see death. They who discern truth as truth and illusion as illusion walk the right road. So they're not mentioning any particular religion or person or walk of life, just a walker on the road. Many different kinds of travelers, like Christ said, sojourners in the kingdoms within, who come to this same conclusion that the soul is birthless and deathless, and you have to be careful of the appearances of things. That's called Maya in that tradition, or Mara in Buddhism. And just keep your foot on that right road of universalism. There's Moses with his tablet. Hear ye, O Israel, our Lord is one God. And I think the book of Moses is where I drew these quotes from. These scriptural quotes are both very beautiful. Thou remainest ever the same, and thy years will not change that. So beautiful Jewish koan there. You remain ever the same, and aging is not going to change that. Neither is birth nor death, as Buddha said above. They no longer see death. So here's Moses talking about no birth, and no aging. Basically, the six transformations are impossible to affect you in any way when you have this knowledge that there's one God underlying everything. He further says, it, and that it would, of course, be Yahweh, or the word for God in Judaism, if you could find a good one. It is not hidden, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, nor is it beyond the sea. Verily, it is nigh unto thee, nestled deeply in thine own heart. So again, this is that turn of the realization of the seers, not just to turn a phrase, but to turn back and turn words towards this deep meaning of everything, which has to do with thine own self. It's thou shalt know thyself. I wrote a God blog last week and put that in amongst the God blogs, because we're looking at the three versions or three kinds of Atman. The outer Atman, which is all this, the inner Atman, which is mind and its thought, and the supreme Atman, which is beyond them both. Bahir antaram va, it's beyond both the outer and inner in Sanskrit. So there you see here the same great truths being uttered by this great soul. Now, under Moses is Jesus. He says, I and my Father are one. And that's, of course, a well-known Advaitic statement in Christendom. And then John was saying, maybe he heard it from Jesus, no man has seen God at any time. So that is, you can't see God with the eyes or hear God with the ears. It's not out here. It's always within this deep self inside of your own heart is where you will have direct communion with God. Everything else is through some vehicle or through some mechanism. Vehicle being Ishvara or a guru or an acharya, and a mechanism being a tattva, right? So you've got living, more sentient versions of God in the form of the avatars, the rishis, the seers, the saints, the sages, okay? And then the other part of that is you've got communion with God through tattvas, water, earth, fire, air, ether, seeing, touching, tasting, hearing, smelling. All the 24 tattvas or cosmic principles is a kind of communion with Brahman, but you've never seen Brahman or God or Yahweh, in any of those. It doesn't inhabit a form. It only associates with a form. Is one case say you can one way you can say that. That's why you're attracted to some shining souls, like like suras, deities, and then you're not attracted or even averse to others because they're dark. It's because there's more or less of that light of Brahman in them. But Brahman itself, in total, no. Do the waves belong to the ocean, or does the ocean belong to the waves? Sri Ramakrishna used to explain that in a non-dual way. You have to say the waves all belong to the ocean. So in that way, you come to that unanimous, one-pointed conclusion about all of this, about your oneness of your soul with God, the impossibility of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death to affect your true nature, and the oneness of God and the people, and also the unanimous decision of all this, as attested to by, so far, Buddha, Moses, Jesus. Let's look what Muhammad in Islam says. All of you have issued from the one. And follows it up by that one saying, the perfect man is of most use to others. So this includes all of humanity then, and it includes all religious ideologies and paths that should be seen as sister religions. But the accent here we're trying to give is that we should probably be hands-on some of these religions and find out what their truths are expressing, so that will enhance our own religion, and it will also increase our love for our own chosen ideal. That's called Ishtam in India, your chosen ideal. In the middle there is Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The soul bound is man. That same soul free is God. Talk about turn of phrase that's very Zen-like, koan-like. The soul bound, if that soul is bound, then you say, well, there's a man. But if you see that soul free, you say, wow, there's God, as it were. You see, there's God walking around on two legs. That more of that light of Brahman, in other words, is coming out of that person. He talks about the fire of knowledge in yoga. If a man's mind gets boiled over the fire of knowledge, he will not be used thereafter for the new creation. Of course, that infers inside of it that there are many beings who have been used for the next creation. They're coming back in what's called reincarnation or rebirth many times, they say, in both Hinduism and Buddhism, and in Jainism and other Indian darshanas. It's a sort of a special facet of the Eastern religions to remind us that we live many times, even though we're one. We have many expressions of life. And it's all coming out of that one ultimate reality. It's like icebergs forming in one ocean and then dissolving back. There's that kind of thing. Well, there's Zoroaster at the bottom. Not a lot to find about him, direct quote wise. He said, there is nothing worth loving that is not of the light. So a light is another great analogy, an example to use for Brahman. It pervades everywhere. Like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the light inside of a lamp, is the same light as the light outside of the house, the sun. It's the same fire. So you have that similarity between all these perspectives and these beings who talk about the light. In this term with a capital L. Let's go up and see what Sri Krishna, this is Sri Ram, what he says about this beautiful idea of oneness of all things. The destruction of things is their return to the cause that produced them. So that sort of X's death and out of the equation, doesn't it? Or nihilism, or emptiness, or it just puts it in that. And there's a quote inside of the picture saying that he said in the Ramayana, illumination dawns on the human mind by stages. He also says the idea of I and thou is a fruit of the soul's ignorance. So he's taking away the individual I, which is getting in the way of everything. Like in world religion today, it's my religion. Some of the leaders say that. It's better than your religion. My watch keeps the only right time, is how Sri Ramakrishna explained that. So you can see Sri Ramchandra, one of the earliest of avatars in India, has a very different view of all of this than many of today's religious leaders and what their opinions are. He has the truth. First, he knows it's beyond birth and death and destruction and creation. Second, he knows that that I is getting in the way of that kind of a greater vision. And so that has to be given away. You know, how Sri Ramakrishna put that is not I, but thou. Not I, but thou, O mother. He gave everything away. And as far as Ramchandra is concerned, there are beautiful hymns about him too that are sung that have the universal quality in them, not just the quality, but actually mentions other religions inside the hymns. Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Jaya Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Bhaja pyare tu Sita Ram Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Bhaja pyare tu Sita Ram Ishvara ala tero naam sabako sanmati de Bhagavan Ishvara ala tero naam sabko sanmati de Bhagavan Jaya Raghupati Raghava Raja Ram Patita Pavana Sita Ram. He says, O Lord, I declare that all of this is one and indivisible. You are the savior of all the lowly and fallen ones, no matter which religion they come from. You are the controller of all the mind and senses of all living beings. You are the one with different names. Ishvar to the Hindus, Allah to the Muslims, Jesus to the Christians. Please give right knowledge to everyone. Continually chant the holy name of Sitaram again and again for the highest good of all living beings of the entire world. So there's a beautiful instance of one of India's bhajans, they call it holy compositions in honor of the Lord, which mentions at least three different religions in it, and the founders of those religions. So there's where we have this beautiful idea from the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat, Vipra Bahuda Vedanti. Vedanti, so this one Ekam Sat, one truth, is existing in the foundation of all these different religious traditions. So when we look into Ram's quote, that immediately comes to mind. And Sri Krishna too, he says, perception of the end of knowledge and truth is true knowledge. What is opposed to it is declared as ignorance. So in all thinking, even whether higher or lower, and all knowledge, whether apara or para, will merge into truth, non-dual truth. He says further, indivisible, it dwells in creatures as if divided. Another way of saying that there's one being in all these multifarious souls here. One soul with a capital S in all these billions of souls, not just 1.9 billion that we talked about, but some almost 8 billion now. One underlying existence, one ground of existence, one fundamental consciousness that knits them all together and forms the mutual experience that they all have through mind and senses and body too. So that one dwells in all creatures as if divided. So that with that little bit of knowledge in there, then you can see when you look at each different person that you meet during a day, that came from the same source. He came from the same source. She came from the same source. The religion that one's practicing, the same foundation. The religion that one's practicing, though seemingly different, has the same truth underlying it. You can do that as a practice that the University of Universality asks you to do after you get your degree. Krishna goes on saying, no one should weep for the dead or for the living. All of us were before and shall not cease hereafter. And it goes very much right across the board to Moses, right? When he says, you remain as ever the same, and your years will not change that. So they're saying the same thing in different hemispheres about this same truth that is the foundation of these different religions, which all have one source as their essence. All of us were before and shall not cease hereafter. So that's the continuation of this one light, which suffers no darkness and has no boundaries. Shankara, go to one of the non-dual Advaitins, says, the seer sees all as one spirit. So that seer could be a Christian seer, a Muslim seer, or an Indian seer, a rishi. They'd still see that one spirit in all beings. We have that on good record with Sri Ramakrishna's incarnation recently. But Shankara goes beyond the risk and the challenge of failing to see all beings from one God or failing to recognize all religions when he says, the world exists no longer when this mental dream is finished. So all these aspects that are people, that are religions and pathways and all of that, practices, that will make no never mind to the soul who's realized this one reality as the foundation of all. At that point, he'll just say, I told you so, as he or she returns to the essence. I told you all the religions were the same. I knew it back there on earth as they merge into that. As that iceberg that was a follower of any kind of tradition back in the world dissolves back into the ocean. It's just a fact of the matter. It's a foregone conclusion. That a nice expression in English? It's a foregone conclusion by the seers that there's one consciousness, one religion underlying all of these. We could finish the chart then. There are hosts of illumined souls that populate the atmospheres of higher wisdom. Seers, saints, sages, yogis, munis, siddhas, etc. The divine incarnation transcends all of these. Now, that's why we've looked here at some 6 or 7 different divine incarnations of these different traditions. They should be the greatest authorities on them, and you can see how they have the same conclusion about things like God, religion, the soul, and the world. They're all saying the same thing, along with such things as birth, death, and suffering. They've got that all well understood. Another quote here, an avatar usually appears on earth in a company of divine companions, like Buddha's Noble Eight, Christ's 12 apostles, and Ramakrishna's 16 direct disciples. So that is further proof and further depths that you can go into when you start looking at some of the great sayings that these beings, that occurred to the minds of these great beings after they had been in the company of souls like this. And those come up, and we won't pause there for it. Those come up in this second chart, which years later, I wanted to follow up on the Mahavakyas. By the way, Mahavakya means great statement. So these are some of the great statements of seers and saints and incarnations, prophets, if you will, Buddhas, from the world's great souls. And so that's what a Mahavakya is, great utterances they made. This you can see is labeled number 2. That is, that it's Mahavakyas of the world's avatars, number 2. Years later, I went into this because I wanted to follow up on this first one and had studied deeper in the University of Universality myself and began to come up with, in the different scriptures of the world's religious traditions, many more many more statements that I put aside in a collection, a list, so that I could use them again for a chart like this. This Mahasaraswati in the background paying her veena or her ektar, and you could see that on top of that is a somewhat different collection of beings, that some of them more contemporary. And in that way, we get a good cross-section of flavor from these beings on the subject of universality. At the top, the tradition relates that there were 71 teachers from Lord Copula to Shankara, and from Shankara to the present day, a lineage of 76 teachers have been enumerated. At approximately 1400 BC, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad enumerated 66 generations of teachers up to that time. Patanjali, he lived that particular incarnation as named Patanjali about 140 AD. Patanjali has stated that there are as many as 84,000 rishis, custodians, and conduits of a perennial wisdom, which is revealed repeatedly in each cycle of creation, in each yuga, and then again 4 times or more in each Mahayuga, and then 16 more times again in each Manvantara, and then so forth, over this long expanse of time with no beginning, middle, or end to it, where all these souls are coming up like bubbles rising out of water and then dissolving back in, big ones in their case. And when they dissolve back in, they leave behind these great sayings that you'll hear here. Sri Ramakrishna says, the madness of knowledge and the divine madness of love. When dust is raised by a storm, all things look alike. Just so, when these moods come upon me, I see no difference between Brahman and the world. There's at that Advaitic level where the third eye is open and everything's being seen as the truth. Then he just sees Brahman everywhere and begins to have that vision of unity. So he couldn't go out then and say, oh, there goes a Muslim, or there goes a Jain, or there goes a Sikh, because he has a turban on and so forth. But he would just go out and see there's Brahman everywhere. There's Brahman everywhere. So the religions all have their ground again in that one indivisible consciousness. pure conscious awareness. Another great incarnation of India is Chaitanya. You can see him here, and he says, one should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of any or all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer sincere respect to all others. With this pure state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So that was the universal thinking of Chaitanya there in India, again, with all these different religions around. We looked at them on the chart we started out so we could refresh our mind about all the different religions that are there. Some of them um, came into India, like Muslim religion and so forth. And Christianity too entered into India. Refreshing to have a woman to hear, to listen to. There's our great Sri Sharda Devi, Holy Mother. She said, if one is able to meditate upon the Guru and pray to God for even 2 minutes with full concentration, it is very good. So she's then talking about our mental perspective and our power of dharana or concentration. If we want to go into that meditation with full concentration on that one underlying relation. So you would affirm that first, and then you'd go to the ishtam of your own religion and start chanting his name, as Chaitanya said here, or her name in this case. Basically, then you've got that foundation of form and formlessness, of reality and its expressions, of Brahman and Shakti, of the oneness and its dynamic power to express itself. And in the middle here, we have two other great beings. The father of Vedanta was affectionately called, his name is Vedavyas. He says, mind flows two ways, towards beatitude and towards evil. The former courses along the domain of discernment and merges in the reservoir of isolation. The latter enters the swamp of worldly transmigration. I'm sure probably after reading the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali that Vedavyas thought of that when he studied that great system of Raja Yoga. And from a Vedantic lens, with a Vedantic lens, he looked at that. And that's one of the great hybrids and combinations of India's philosophies, Vedanta with yoga. I think it's very beautiful. Like Buddhism and yoga was also a very good combination, co-mingling and co-marriage of two great philosophies. So it shows that not only is there this one underlying foundation to it all, but when it does break into two or many, you can connect those. Those are actually opportunities to connect something like Vedanta with yoga or Buddhism with Tantra and bring it back to the source of understanding that all of this is coming from one spring. All of these waterfalls, all of these waves, all of these bubbles, all of these ripples, all coming from one vast repository of pure conscious awareness. And the beautiful thing. And here's Buddha next to Vedavyas. He says, that one in whom is born a sublime longing for the ineffable, whose mind is permeated by this deep yearning, such a one is called by the sages and seers one bound upstream. It doesn't even use a single word for it, just one bound upstream. So that's the opening of these nadis to the kingdoms of heaven within, the Dharakasha, we just called it, and then going back to the source. That's their one great goal of life. That, in his case, would be called pari nirvana or nirvana or mahanirvana. But there has to be a sublime longing for the ineffable being. That's that one behind all the many. And also has to be a deep yearning for communion with that. So that's what you're trying to achieve with your doctorate degree at the University of Universality, is that deep yearning and that non-dual wisdom combined. It will give you that ability to return to the source and in some cases, even return to the world to show others how to return back to the source. We have three other examples here to look at, if not more, four. There's Patanjali, we've been talking about him, father of yoga, affectionately called, says, unwavering illumination of discriminatory wisdom is the way of nullification of all negativities. They are eliminated via observance of the limbs of yoga. The first limb of yoga is nonviolence. And so definitely inferring that great universality that it gets recalled by the practice of yoga via this discriminatory wisdom and the act of recovering it called viveka. Lord Kapila was mentioned already at top, how in the tradition says that there were 71 great teachers from Kapila on to Shankara. That's many thousands of years, all talking about this great underlying presence called Brahman or God or Allah or Buddha nature. He says the union of the soul and nature has for its only object to give the soul the knowledge of nature and make it capable of eternal freedom. If we could find an utterance like that from the ancient and noble Lord Kapila, then you could see that that eternal freedom is at the foundation of everything. It always has been in India. It's called moksha or mukti. And great beings have said that you attain moksha or mukti after you get koivalya, the ability to separate yourself out from Maya, from nature, from everything except that one Brahman into which you want to merge. There's Sri Krishna again. Let's take another quote from him. Seek enlightenment by prostrating, by questioning, and by service. The wise, the seers of truth, will then initiate you into the esoteric wisdom path. A beautiful excerpt from Bhagavad Gita. And above Sri Krishna there is Swami Vivekananda. We haven't seen a quote from him yet. Let's take this one. May the desire to realize the eternal Brahman blaze up in you more and more until all your past karma is absolutely annihilated. So that's going to be a necessity if you walk the path towards universality, is to make sure that there's no heavy baggage you're bringing in. You want to go to the university to study fully, concentrated, without any weights on you from the world, like having to make a living, having to deal with family, having to go to school to get lower degrees than this one we're talking about here. Those have to be set aside, at least temporarily, so that you can get to the essence that he's talking about here. All these karmas that have grown around this kind of perspective, which is not non-dual, which is not fully aware of how many ways God's expressing him or herself or itself through the various traditions of the world, is keeping you from entering into that final gate, that wisdom gate. I think we covered them all here. Mahavakyas of the world's avatars too. So these are some proofs from a good 8, 9, 10 different great souls about how this, how they think about this, not only the one eternal presence of God in everything, including behind the religions, but also how to deal with false superimpositions like birth, growth, disease, old age, and death, and narrowness in terms of religious view. All of that gets put aside, get thee behind me kind of style when you have this higher view that the University of Universality is giving us here. Now, there's one other chart that I wanted to go through. This would be in terms of how to prepare yourself for such a stunning vision of the universality of all religions. It's the way we look to Sri Ramakrishna in this present time, because he's Sarvadharma Swarapakaha. He's the essence of all these religious paths. He championed that vision and realized them all in his lifetime in the 1800s, passed this great vision and its truths on to Swami Vivekananda and the other 15 direct disciples and some lay disciples there. As we were saying, just like Jesus had uttered it, this new way, what's called the new dispensation now, back at the time when he had his 12 disciples gathered around him. And 500 years before Jesus, when Buddha gave it out to Ananta and other of his noble eight disciples. All of this has been going on from teacher to disciple, from time out of mind. And that's the part that Maya can't cover. You see, it might try, but if you have this idea of that all religions are pronouncing the truth just with different languages and then have different methods to reach it, then you can enrich yourself with that. And that's a beautiful thing to have yourself availed of when you go into this world, because there's such a thing as irreligion here. That is, and maybe irreligion is kind of false, but then there's also such a thing as conventional religion, which has become old and tired and worn out. Is why Krishna says, from age to age, I embody myself forth to resurrect the Dharma and destroy the old Dharma and resurrect the new Dharma. So I'll keep that which is true, universally true, and bring that forward and destroy and dissolve all of these false notions that have come along in the name of religion that have become rather pedantic and plodding, old, superstitious, Vivekananda said in this day and time. He saw that superstition in Christianity. He saw it in Hinduism. So you find out that this doesn't matter, again, where in the world it appears. It's happening to every religion. But what you want to know that behind that is that every religion has that ultimate truth, it has possession of it. It's reflected through not only its great seers, which I hope now that you understand, because I remember giving this class with these two charts at a university in Wyoming. So basically, those people were not all of that availed of knowledge of any other religion but Christianity. But I had a full screen. I showed these charts and I walked up to them with a pointer and I said, look at what everyone in the world of different religions is saying about God and see if you don't agree. And they had to, at that time, see that. So this is something that needs to be demonstrated, illustrated to people so that they can open their arms, not only for the good of world harmony, which we're hoping to champion, but also so that they will become enriched with the wonderful teachings of the like, say, that we got when we looked at Jainism last week. Did you memorize your 6 samitis yet? I was. And saying, oh, I've got to make sure I observe the 6 samitis of Jainism as I walk around now very carefully, you see. Try not to cause harm to anything, not even in here, right? So maybe you could be nonviolent and outside and all this, but is your mind falling from that ideal? Is the next level of challenge for that? I mean, you could see an Arab walk into the bank, see, or somebody whose country's in at war with your country. And even though they're not involved in that directly, you can have this thought just because of the way they look and the country they're from, and you forget all about their religion and their belief in God. So that's how you train the mind in, after you've graduated or as you're taking classes in the University of Universality. You have to keep that openness of heart and mind going, no matter who you see or who you meet or where you meet them, because you will travel around the world at some point. You'll be in the minority. They'll be looking at you, this Caucasian person walking around in their country, and what thoughts are they having? So do unto others as you would have them do unto you is a one of those universal sayings we like. In the remaining time then, so that we conclude this third class in a three-class series, I wanted to show you how not only do we look at Sri Ramakrishna as a paragon of universal harmony of religions. One of the great things he brought here, he also brought our remembrance of the Divine Mother Shakti back, didn't he? By worshiping his own wife, Shisharda Devi, and also Mother Kali. And so those are several things that he's known for. Also, that samadhi is our true nature and that we can have it, that we should be having samadhi. As Shankar said, practice having samadhi. And put yourself in that atmosphere of samadhi, and then let it occur to you. That's the way it's going to happen anyway, quite spontaneously. So besides Ramakrishna and those 3 or 4 points, which we could always bring forth, there's then also India, the example of India herself. And that's a good thing to probably wrap up this class with. That goes back to this old warhorse that we've looked at before, but it's impossible to really take it all in at once. But by looking at it and different facets of different traditions, religions, philosophies, and darshanas in India, and sampradayas, cults, sects. I mean, if you look back at this, didn't we see that there are many ethnic sects there? We have Chinese religions. There were tribal religions. So we've got a whole bunch of different beliefs in the one God going on there. And so in that way, then, we can look to India as having housed or homed so many of these. We looked at some of them on the chart there, but here you can see them listed in some of their main ways. So basically what you see there is Vedanta, and then yoga, or Raja Yoga, Patanjala it's called, also called Ashtanga Yoga, and Samkhya. I mean, we had quotes in these charts, the Mahavakyas we just looked at, from the founders of each one of those. Then you have Vashishta's Yoga. We had one quote by him. And then you have Kundalini Yoga. And then you have Tantra and you have Buddhism listed all around this great direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda, as he came to the West. Sat in a beautiful ornate oriental chair in a museum once, I think, and they got a picture of him doing that. So this is an example of how India has qualified itself to be among the foremost, if not the foremost, of all those who have realized that the world's traditions come from one source. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedantya, or Vedanti. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudi Vedanti. So basically, one great source, many ways to lead to it. One ocean, many rivers flowing into it. One tallest mountain, many paths leading to its summit. I mean, there's so many ways in which you can quote that, Ekam Sat, but it's one truth, basically, and then the many paths leading to it. One of the oldest, if not the oldest statement in any religious scripture of this universality we're talking about. So India has great claim to that kind, and it's been gained by practice of living together with other religions, of even having them birthed out of their own soul, not what to speak of incursion from other religions, welcoming them open arm into their land, as ancient as Bharat, when it was called Bharat, the eternal land. And therefore able to express best these different paths and ways, these windows into the great soul of religion, if you want to put it that way. And we can go through them fairly quickly without studying them because we have studied them at other times. If you take Vedanta, which is what Vivekananda brought to us here in the West to help us so much in this day and time, basically neti neti would be the path. Uh, make sure you do away with everything that's in the way of your vision of this great oneness or this great spirit that's behind everything. Take away everything that's unnecessary for realization of that, even if for the time being, get thee behind me kind of idea again. And so Vedanta proceeds by sadhana, spiritual practice, and four types of it. Sadhana chatushtaya, it's called. So he wants you to discriminate, to detach from that which you find is not worthy, and then to practice the six jewels and to reach pure mind. See, and that way it leads you internally to the goal of Vedanta. It also wants you to see through the five sheaths or look at everything as a division of coverings called false superimpositions, vivarta, over the soul. It's called the five koshas: body, energy, mind, thought, and ego are the five koshas, simply put. So you're going to be looking through those and past them and beyond them to this one ultimate truth, which is the same truth that yoga is trying to get you to see and tantra is trying to get you to worship. We'll see that in a minute. Then there's the four yogas himself. I invite you all this weekend to the seminar on the many flames of yoga. And we will study not only these four yogas, but the five most ancient yogas of the Vedas, and also some of the yogas that have combined to produce their own path in India. Another great example of how this knowledge of oneness can create so many pathways to it. And then Trigunatita wants you to go beyond limiting nature. We just said that you'll want to go beyond Prakriti or beyond the body-mind mechanism and find what's insentient in the mixture and find yourself to be the sentient soul observer of all this. You're going to have to go through the modes of nature to find that. See, why is nature dragging me down? Why is nature exciting me? Why is nature pleasing me? Those three things have to go because only Purusha exists. I am Purusha, that came out of me is Prakriti. Therefore, I want to see myself. Thou shalt know thyself means nature has to get behind you or back within you where it came from, back within the mind. And you can let the Mahat do that for you. That's called Ishvara Yoga, or you can let the mother do that for you. And that would be the dynamism of the Shakra Advaita path. It's all back within you. You can bring it back whenever you want, but it's in the way right now. It's kind of a way of saying that. So let's clear the view, not think about all the extraneous and the conventional and the surface and the superficial anymore. I want intense communion, intimate communion with the one. And that's how Vedanta would help you approach it in four simple points, but there are more to Vedanta, of course. Patanjali wants to do it by having you meditate on the yamas and niyamas. And that's why we're saying if we're warring with other religions, then we've already transgressed the first yama, which is ahimsa. You've got to be non-aggressive. Aggression won't do. Nobody likes an aggressive person. Do you like an aggressive dog when it comes at you? See, everyone likes a nice dog, wags its tail and looks at you, licks your hand when you walk up. So non-aggression is the way to peaceful relations and people get along with each other. It's an obvious fact, but even human beings in the thousands, maybe millions, don't know that yet. They're still having himsa, violence, and aggression as a part of their life. So this is just the beginning of yoga, the first yama. and how you would master it. And then they want you to take these and other tattvas and make them into means of meditation. That's what the word alambana means. It means I'm going to take fire and meditate on it. When I did that, after a long enough time, I found out that it's the best purifier. If I took that into my mind and let it burn there, that's the fire of yoga. The fire of intelligence is there. And I took that deeper, and it began to burn away all my ignorance and all my karmas, right? As Krishna was saying, to burn away all your karmas. So that was done just by one little act of taking fire as an alambana, nice Sanskrit word, a station for concentration, a station for meditation. And you should do that with earth, water, air, and ether too. If you do it with ether, there's 5 different ethers inside of you, 5 different kinds of space, or daharakashas back in there. The kings of heaven, if you want to call them that. My father's mansion has many rooms. So many ways in which they've tried to intimate this to people who are seekers. Part of yoga is Kriya Yoga. There are 10 you can work on, yamas, niyamas. You can take 3 of those if you want. And basically that's going to be study your scriptures and do some austerity so that you realize what you just studied by expanding yourself with austerity, and then love the Lord on top of that. That's the 3 aspects of Kriya Yoga. You don't need nothing more. See, all you need to do is to have that to surrender to the Lord. That's called Sharanagata Yoga. Holy Mother talks about that. We'll be looking at that this weekend with a new chart. Pranayam. Connect the breath to the pranava. Right? So that's, I learned this breathing exercise. Sit down with me. Now we'll start huffing and puffing like a bellows. No. My prana, my breathing's sacred. I just want to acknowledge it. Then I want to connect it back to the word, to the great sound, and to the great view, and to the great breath. See, I want to take one conscious breath in my lifetime. In, held, out. Pretty soon I'll be saying, breathe in, I'll be saying, I am Brahman. Where did that thought come from? And all of a sudden, I will always be Brahman. Where did that thought come from? Then I'm not the world. Whew, what a relief. See, I'm not birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. I'm not brooding and worry and problems and wars, and none of that am I. I am a pure conscious Atman inside. And that's how you settle the chitta vrittis. Right? Those famous in yoga, chitta, thoughts, vrittis, vibrations. Those vibrations are driving me crazy. They're turning everyone into a nervous wreck, as Gaudapada said. Mentioned that yesterday at satsang, right? Those beings who do not have that control of their mind's thoughts, we call them nervous wrecks. In the Karika on the Mandukya Upanishad, you'll find that. What else? Pratyahar. Yoga avers that you should control your senses and bring them off the objects. They've been on the objects far too long. And so you need to take them off that and place them inside on pure conscious awareness. You can do that through fire first, through water, through breathing and all that. These are all steps that you go back, because yoga is a practice. Vedanta is a perfection. Yoga is a practice. The two go together, as I said, like a perfect hybrid. And this is just an example of two of these darshanas in India that are all leading you toward the realization of one truth, ekam sat, one truth that underlies both the movements of religion themselves and the thoughts of those seers, like Vedavyas and Patanjali, right? Vedavyas here, Patanjali here. What was their thinking like? It was based in oneness when they brought forth these great darshanas. Darshana means a clear way to see. So it's a path that leads to that one perfection that's in all, and the foundation of all. And we could go on with more and more of these. Maybe we'd save that for another class because our time has run out. But I wanted to give you an idea of how India is qualified for talking about universality. Uh, and Sri Ramakrishna's child of India, the most recent avatar of the Kali Yuga, they call him, he has realized this and is now there for us to go to, not only in our deepest meditations, but in his own Upanishad. There's a Ramakrishna Upanishad out there. And all the various great sources, like Vivekananda's complete works, and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna written down by M. Mahendranath Gupta, all of these are just illustrations and examples of somebody who has brought forth the realization of the oneness of all religious traditions in this day and age. In the remaining time, then, let's go into one or two more of these. Yeah, I saw you pointing at the watch, so I thought that was it. Probably good to take these three, Vedanta, Tantra, and Samkhya, in a row, because there are these three great philosophical steps or stairs, stairs of a step, that steps of a stair that go within you to this highest, which we would call Advaita Vedanta. And there you see, because under Vedanta, I had to choose one of the modes of Vedanta, so I chose Neti Neti as kind of the most famous. When I put down Patanjali's system, I had to choose Ashtanga, the eight-limbed, of course. When I put down Samkhya, you probably would want to put down Tattva Vid. Vid means knowledge, and Tattvas means principles. So those very principles that we were just talking about, the five elements and the five senses, the fivefold mind, if you add in cosmic mind, and the five tanmatras, and all of these are tattvas that were outlined with us, for us, by one of India's greatest, earliest seers called Lord Kapila. So you can see how Vedanta, Vedavyas, Patanjali, Yoga, and Kapila Samkhya all are this broad staircase with three huge steps on it that India offers us, all coming off of that foundation of not only religions are one and the same, but these darshanas also build themselves off of that oneness, right? 6 orthodox darshanas. 1, 2, 3. Here's 3 of them in India. So these are the three of the great orthodox paths. In fact, the other 3 are a little bit veiled right now. These 3 have kind of come on the fore in this age to look at, particularly yoga and Vedanta. Vedanta is making headway now to come back. And yoga has got the problem of hatis, based people who are attracted to the body and occult powers getting in the way. But real yoga, we want to bring that forth as this kind of yoga, and particularly recover the Kriya Yoga idea too, and put it into that threefold designation I just talked about. But as far as Samkhya goes, if you want to go back and use that, you'll find out such great things as the dissolution of the mind practice springs from that kind of study. That is, you'll look at the 24 cosmic principles and you'll have stepping stones back in. I had someone on a Zoom yesterday have them laughing by talking about coming to a river and crossing it by jumping from stone to stone, as you used to do when you were a kid. You say, find a way over, and which way can you go? All these stepping stones. Oh, there's one missing there. I can't make that jump. So basically, philosophy in India is like that. If there's something missing, a stone missing, like we don't know our breath yet, there's a stone missing. Or we don't know the sacredness of food yet, so we're not offering it as prasad and then eating it after it's pure. That's a missing step. See, and things like Kundalini Yoga will go into that. You see, you can see it there. Anaprasad is the first thing. You've got to have your food sacred again. It's got to be conscious of not only the food itself, but how you eat it, right? And you're not going to probably have either of those unless you think it pure. You go looking for pure food, and then you render it pure with in the ritual of cooking it, you see, and then you eat it consciously. And so all of this is called anaprasad, the sanctity of food. So the idea here is that back to the 24 cosmic principles, if there's some stepping stones missing, then the society suffers and the world suffers. And pretty soon everyone begins acting like dogmatic dogs and mischievous monkeys. Sorry, that was just a subtitle that got into my mind for an article I was just proofing. So basically, everyone starts acting like monkey see, monkey do. And pretty soon everyone's eating unconsciously. And stores are selling food they're not conscious of the purity of it. And all of these things, keep you from crossing the river, right? That stone is missing. I can't jump that. So I'm going to have to go back and plug in my breathing process consciously again. Oh, that feels better. My teacher just told me to connect it to the Om, to the Pranava. Hear it in the distance, like an ocean beyond the sand dunes. Sri Ramakrishna said, the Om humming back there. My Holy Mother said, concentrate on that for a while on the right side. See? And then this sound Brahman, Shabda Brahma path will open up for you. Ah, the rocks are all there. See, I can cross the river now by jumping each one of them. So this is what Kapila has done for us by putting together the 24 cosmic principles, tattvas of our existence. He did it, 6,000 years BC, probably, because Krishna is a few thousand years BC at least, and he's mentioning Lord Kapila in the Gita. Of sages, I am Kapila, Krishna says. So that's how far back that goes. We want to be careful of the three kinds of suffering. Trividam dukkam. Dukkha means suffering. So that's pretty much external, internal, and like diseases and so forth, and then diseases of the mind, and suffering coming from outer sources, like talk about war and religion. I don't like a religion. I'm going to, destroy it. I want my view called materialism, to be first and foremost in the world. So I'm going to destroy all other religions. Sound familiar? We've got these warmongers that do that, think they have the right to do that even. So basically, that's kind of an idea of a kind of suffering that's coming almost beyond your control from the outside. And so that's a teaching in Buddhism, and it's a teaching in Samkhya too. Trividam dukkam. You're going to have to find a way of overcoming those three, because they will come to you and make you think that everything is black, everything is hopeless, and there's no way out of this problem, and cause you to give up. So those are where you want to go beyond using these darshanas, even putting these darshanas together over time. Not only so you can help the world as far as it's possible, but you can cross the river to the other side, right? Svasti Vaha Paraya Tamasaha Parastat, out of the Svetashvatara Upanishad. Godspeed to you in crossing over to the furthest shore beyond all darkness, right? That's the sage of the seer of the Svetashvatara Upanishad speaking to us from ancient times. He wants us to cross that shore. There are 10 tenets to Samkhya Yoga. There are 9 complacencies you have to be careful, and there are 8 great accomplishments that you can have in Samkhya Yoga. So I would aver to say that this is a darshana with methods in it. So is yoga. And so these are the great cosmological practice and the great physiological and philosophical practice, and then the great universal practice, if it's a practice at all, is Vedanta. And it's the oneness of everything is best championed and expressed by Advaita Vedanta. Vasishtha's Yoga wants you to follow what Krishna said in one of these charts we just looked at, that nahi gyanena sadrisham pavitram miha vidyate, that's atmagyan, right? That knowledge has to destroy all ignorance, because knowledge is the best and most efficient destroyer of ignorance. And you'll find in Atmagyan, there's Mityagyan, and there's Aparavidya and Paravidya and Brahmavidya, Atmavid, Brahmavid. So there's different kinds of knowledge. The first one is false knowledge. A lot of people live on that. It's not actually so hard to believe. They're living on ignorant assumptions all the time. Sometimes people's whole lives are based on a lie. We've heard that before. It's true. But when you start getting into something like the oneness of all religions and get rid of that narrowness that's at the foundation of it and begin to pick up on the practices in the university that you're going to of universality, that's when all of that begins to go away, and you're not even interested anymore in lower knowledge. You go by the college that's up the street, right? There's a couple colleges on your way on the path, you see, as you walk towards the University of Universality, and you just walk right by them with your nose in the air. See, no more will I take on lower knowledge as the solution for all things. It's trapped me again and again. Duty is the midday sun that's burning the very vitals of humanity. I won't suffer it anymore. What about trividam dukkam? I'm not going to go to any of those kinds of external influences that are going to cause me to suffer in the world anymore. I'm now qualified for the university, for entrance into the University of Universalism. And that's where I'm headed. So basically, these are going to demand of the soul that it has, or at least has a good handle or a beginning on Atmagyan. That's that highest wisdom that's beyond the lower wisdom. It's also called Paravid, the supreme knowledge. Vasishtha also talks about such great things as the four sentinels, which are guards at the gate of your mind, as it were, to keep it from going wrong. He also talks about karma samskara vinasha. That is how to destroy your karmas and your mental impressions that are limiting. And he then brings forth those very five akashas I was just talking about earlier. 5 kinds of space. I mean, a good example of that is how we just here on Earth, most of the billions of souls just believe in one kind of space, physical. Yet they're in a dream space tonight without their senses. What was that? A figment? The Advaita Vedantas don't think so, and think that that's where the kingdoms of heaven were, and you went there. And that's where everything is more eternal, because you saw your father there in a dream, and so forth. Not just the great father, if you were so fortunate, but your father who passed away in this lifetime was there. So that's proof of a subtle space that's somewhere inside of you, because you didn't go outside the dream, did you? I mean, it all happened inside of you, right? And this thing called a mind. So the 5 akashas is a beautiful study, something to really avail yourself of. Going up from the bottom, we already talked about Kundalini Yoga's Anaprasad. Probably you'd say, though the word is a little risky at this time, because some pseudo-gurus have distorted it. It's called Shaktipat. So, better to get Mantri Guru than a Shaktipat Guru, unless the Shaktipat Guru is free of intentions for your keeping you from reaching the goal. Should have the highest intentions. And so you need to work on this yourself. You need to get free yourself, not depend on any other source to get you free, because your bondage was an illusion in the first place. It's not true. You're not bound. You're always free. You're ever free, never bound. So a great teacher will tell you that and then give you the methods in order to help yourself out of whatever pickle you got yourself into. You can get out of it. And so uh, Kundalini teaches these things. Mukhya prana, asana, and pranayam. Where back here in yoga, you got that too. It's the third and fourth limbs. Uh, find out that the asana is just one good position that can help you meditate. Pranayam is that connecting the prana to the om. So find out from these great teachers that you don't have to make it more complicated or bring in the occult powers into great darshanas like this. They're clear by themselves. You just have somebody introduce them to you and show you the way without all the complications. Kundalini Shakti is to be awakened, as it were. I mean, essentially, again, she's already at all 7 chakras. It's you that's finding your way to her. But they give you the accompanying thought. What is it? Concession. Give you the concession that she's raising you from center to center. But that's you in your practice, becoming aware of her from center to center. Nobody teaches that. See? So that's the truth of the matter. She's at all centers simultaneously, just like Brahmins in all religions underlying them. And you're just becoming aware of this, and that's called higher wisdom when you get to it. It's just that simple, really. But you have to make it so. The 6 chakras, I just talked about them. Ojas and Tejas, you get that from starting with good food, and then doing your practice. That energy turns into light. That light gets more refined and Tejas. So these are where you find these great teachings that you've heard of before, but you go looking for them sometimes in Vedanta or Tantra, and they might not be there in those scriptures. So you have to go to that one that's known for those teachings. And of course, you do hear it in Vaishnavism and the Gita, but it's not really expanded on. But here in Kundalini, you get the expansion of the Jnana Chakshu. That's that third eye opening. The Upanishads also in Vedanta speak of that. Then you have Tantra above that. It's a whirlwind of darshanas here, but this will give you a cross-section of why India is so qualified to talk about the innate unity of all religious traditions, the one underlying reality of Brahman or God in all of them. That will be shown to you by what I just mentioned below, mantra diksha. You can get initiation into the path. And it would be called taking hand in Sufism, be called taking refuge in Buddhism. It's got different names. It's there in all religions, baptized in Christianity. So basically, you've got all these different ways they're saying the same thing. You just have to be initiated into that inner realm. Because otherwise, it's a great secret. Srishti Rahasya means there is a great secret of the awakening to this reality. Spiritual awakening, it's called. And we want that to happen to us. And of course, in this room and in our association, we have awakened. Now we want to take it all the way to the goal. Along the way, Tantra talks about 7 qualifications that you can do that. And, one of the first ones is you have to be aspirant after Advaita. It's called Dvaitahina. So even the Tantrists who love worship and who love forms, they're after this Advaitic realization. It's in their early qualifications for being a Tantric aspirant. I mean, most of the people who are calling themselves Tantrists in America since the 60s have no idea of the teachings of Tantra. This is one of them. The 3 Shuddhis, you want to attain 3 states of purification. You want to have Panchabhava, that is the 5 modes, like Samadhis in Vedanta, or they're called modes in Tantra. will happen to you. And they can, they can burgeon into some 30 or 40 different bhavas, because Sri Ramakrishna had all of them in his life, different bhavas. And then the 8 devotional aids are there, of Narada, for instance. Then Buddhism, and we'll end here, basically, 37 limbs of enlightenment. It's an awful lot. I haven't done a full chart on all 37 limbs. I've just taken parts of them. Maybe there's just not enough space on what starts out as an 8 by 11, but basically that's how deep and connected, like yoga, Buddhism is. It talks about the Four Noble Truths, and Praticca Samutpada is one of its great, tenets that it teaches. And the 12 nidanas are the links in the chain that bind you to the body and to nature. You have to snap them one by one inward with some of the practices that you get in Buddhism. And you have to be able to see through and go beyond the 6 transformations of birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death. So those are called sadurmi, and Vedanta and Buddhism share those 6 transformations, or they're called the 6 billows. So all of these are teachings that I just whirlwinded through, that in order to say that India has really qualified herself to be able to show you this one abiding reality existing at the foundation of everything, and particularly here of all religious traditions that are working their way to this highest goal of realization, what we'd call moksha or mukti. And that probably gives us a good, rich ending to our 3rd class of this 3-class series on this University of Universality. A truth, a principle whose time has come, and we want to, as I said, use it to bring about that full realization of the arms open wide and all peoples and all religions coming together to celebrate that truth. It would be something that hasn't really been tried that much yet, something that we could take to its full conclusion. And that's sort of the premise of why I'm bringing it up at this particular time in SRV's 30-year history, so that we can look at it deeply and make it one of the attendants upon our goal of reaching self-realization. Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Toye Shritva Pranamami Mahur Mahur Pranamami Mahur Mahur. O Ramakrishna, teacher of all, O Sharada, goddess divine, in bosom holding those lotus feet, salutations to both, ever be of mine. Om